Well, Irish surgeon Dr. Morgan McMonigal, who works for the HSE here, has just returned from working as a medical volunteer in Gaza. With the permission of the people involved, he filmed some of what he witnessed. And what he saw, many of you will find deeply upsetting and unsettling. But this film, put together with Primetime's Conor Wilson and Lucinda Glynn, shows the reality and the real victims of war.
Another liver suture, please. Okay. So I'm walking on the area, the bit of wasteland just outside the hospital at Nasser complex. This was all green field, just a green sort of space in the hospital. It's now dumping ground full of detritus. Garbage, wrecked vehicles, bits of metal. We see on a pretty much a daily basis since getting here, we see children out gathering firewood, bits of metal, anything they can find. I think it's a sad state of affairs. But a year ago, during the siege of Nasser in February, March 2024, this was covered with dead bodies. Out in the open at first, and then shallow graves were bulldozed by the military who occupied the zone at the time. And it was the same in the other hospitals we visit, Al-Halali, which is the Baptist hospital in Gaza City. So how many are estimated to be buried here?
200.
It's very inhuman and inhumane. Mostly inhuman thing to do, to deny healthcare in the conflict.
Both sides. Both sides.
Let's camp on the Yorta here from Historic Academy. Is it bleeding actively?
Oh yeah.
بقول لك دمه 5
Yeah. Giving you a high five. Video. Yeah, good man. You all right? Mm-hmm. What's he saying? Let's go home.
Yes.
Foot looks great.
He's asking, I want to go home.
Yeah. All right.
Also, he lost his siblings.
Lost one.
I don't know, many of his siblings. He's the only living kid for his parents.
That's Triceratops.
That's Triceratops.
This is
Difficult to pronounce. And this is small.
You can hear sounds of, like on this side, jets.
غارة إسرائيلية استهدفت مستشفى ناصر الطبي. نعم، الآن غارة إسرائيلية تستهدف مستشفى ناصر الطبي، الدور الثاني من مستشفى ناصر الطبي. الآن نشاهد.
Search the floor has been hit by missile earlier on, and we believe 3 people killed, and the entire floor has been evacuated now. So, this wasn't a room. About 20 minutes ago, the hospital was hit above the emergency department, second floor. We heard an enormous explosion, and the entire hospital rattled. So. We were told it was hit by a missile. We don't know. That's what we've been told. But the second floor is on fire, and we're taking shelter in the intensive care unit. So we have a lot of vulnerable patients in the ICU as well, and we're waiting for our security to give us the go-ahead. We're not sure what's going to happen. Maybe we'll be evacuating.
So this is the ward. Yay. You can see where the bomb came through right here. This is what it looks like when you blow a patient room in half. It's completely crazy. Lord. Yay.
It's been a very eventful 24 hours. Walking through ICU now. We spent pretty much most of the night in the operating room. We had a blast injury, multiple blast injuries, but the worst case was probably what sounds like an Apache helicopter. 2 young children brought in dead, one probably 4 and 5 years of age. And then we had a girl, 11 years of age, with severe lower limb injuries and upper limb injuries from bullets from an Apache helicopter. Extremely unwell. We repaired her brachial artery. She's a very high chance of losing both lower limbs because of soft tissue and fractures. 11 years of age, and her dad came in with severe injuries as well. He died during the night. Her mom, I believe, is still alive. So that is the reality of what we're dealing with. This is Gaza City, yeah?
And Morgan McMonigal joins me now. That is devastating to watch, Morgan. And I know it's important to say those people want to be filmed. They want their story to be told to the world. But like, you've worked at the Grenfell fire, you've worked in the Westminster Bridge attack, but this seems on an utterly devastating scale what's happening in Gaza.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time I've seen it, the whole video piece put together. By far the worst, and even you heard an American voice in the background. It was one of my colleagues. He worked in the Boston marathon bombing as well, and this is by far the worst that we've had to deal with. I worked in North America, one of the major urban centres. We were dealing with 8 to 10 gunshots a night, but nothing really can compare to what we saw there. Because of the number of children, I mean, just shy of 50% of the Gazan population are under the age of 14. So if you just do very simple math, if you're going to send in a large explosion into a residential area and your only shelter is tents or buildings that are already condemned buildings because of previous bombing, you're going to have at least 50% of the deaths and injuries are going to be children. On top of that, it's an austere environment. They don't have enough supplies. There's malnourishment. They don't have enough medicines. They haven't got enough just materials to fix equipment. So even the night of the mass casualty, while one of my Palestinian colleagues, because you have to speak the language, was directing where patients go, patients were arriving by ambulance, private vehicle that were not properly roadworthy, and even donkey and cart, we had dead patients coming in. 70 went immediately to the mortuary, whereas another perhaps 50 or 60 came into us, and we dealt with the most critically injured at the time.
But I mean, even there, that little boy, he wanted to go home, right? And you were brilliant with him. And there was another story about you were running up the stairs with a badly injured 4-year-old boy. I mean, how do you actually, I know you're a medic, but how do you hold yourself together? How do you deal with that?
Well, I'm pleased to say that's the same boy. He was the very first patient operated on, and like a lot of these situations, there is a certain, not quite panic, it's more organised chaos while you decide, but eventually a domino effect happens. And I didn't trust the elevators, because if you get stuck in the elevator, there isn't even an alarm in the elevator, there's no way to fix them. So he was the first person we operated on, picked him up, brought him straight upstairs. He's kept his leg, he had a popliteal injury, and he also had some bleeding inside his abdomen. But he's lost his siblings, I think 2 siblings. His mother was badly injured. I think she lost an eye, had some facial injury, but his dad was alive and well, and he gave permission for me to use it. And, you know, he was like a little boy. In fact, it was quite a nice thing that 2 days after I got off the ventilator, one of my colleagues, who's a paediatrician, came to me and said, "Oh, your patient is a little brat now." And I said, "That's good, because children should be." And that's exactly what happened. But unfortunately, I spent the whole evening with other Palestinian surgeons who are very, very well-trained surgeons, I have to say. I was very impressed with the level of expertise and knowledge amongst Palestinian surgeons. And I spent the whole night running from room to room, because I do vascular surgery as well as trauma. And we started at about 3 a.m. and I did my last case at about 10 o'clock that night. But many children we pronounced dead straight away. Some died in the operating theatre, some died the next day. And I remember I went back to the residence at about maybe lunchtime, 2 in the afternoon, when things calmed down a little bit. I could get something to drink and something to eat. And I walked through the intensive care unit, and all the beds were full. It's a 20-bed intensive care unit. I went back at about 7 or 8 in the evening, and it was only half full, because they died. And that's the problem with shrapnel and blast. It causes such devastating injuries to every system of the body, head, neck, chest, abdomen, pelvis, that your chances of survival are very, very low with blast injury.
And you're just back from there, and is that it? Have you noticed the nature of the injuries, that it has changed over time?
Well, I was there a year ago, and we had a lot of blast injury then as well. And we had a lot of amputees and children who had lost limbs. And then my first 4 weeks while I was there, the ceasefire was still in operation, so there was no blast going off. We had a lot of falling buildings, people coming in injured, falling buildings. Trying to loot a lot of the vehicles carrying supplies in were run over, and we had a lot of sort of what we call tertiary or quaternary effects of war, where you're dealing with complications because people either couldn't come to hospital on time to deal with maybe cancers or diabetes, or indeed they were having a lot of wound problems. Once the ceasefire ended on the early morning of March 18th, it was all shrapnel. It was pretty much all shrapnel. A few bullet wounds, but mostly shrapnel, and again, mostly children.
Finally, do you think people have enough idea of what's happening there? And when you're back, I gather you're back working already in Waterford, in your HSE role. Is it hard to go back to the life we have here compared to the traumas you've witnessed?
Yeah, you run through different emotions. Some people get very sad and get very emotional. I think anger is one of the big things, because this is all man-made. And I don't mean mankind, I mean man-made. It is, you know, it is purely 100% preventable. It is a political problem with a political solution. I think the emotion I carried most leaving was probably guilt. I felt quite guilty leaving a lot of these patients behind. I felt a lot of guilt leaving my colleagues behind. And in fact, one of the things that a lot of the Palestinian colleagues said to me was they, one, never complained once, never heard them complain once. And secondly, they felt very bad that we were now trapped indefinitely, because we didn't know at the time. I ended up staying an extra 2 weeks because we couldn't get out. We had to wait for permission to leave. And what's quite foreboding, perhaps, is the driver of the armoured UN vehicle that we had to drive through the zone, with the buffer zone, to get out to the Israeli border, who is a Palestinian, said to me that anybody who's left in Gaza now is either dead or will be dead.
Well, Morgan McMonagle,